This is part 3 where we start adding our limbs into our beggar. And what you want to do, you'll want to close that up like you did the back of the head using that star method. Okay, you have 3 options you can do for your legs. Okay, the first option is just make the limb and sew it on chain by chain. Okay, and I'll show you how to do the start of a quick chain. Cast on, get you a slip knot. Find your starting point. Put the slip knot behind the starting peg. Pull the working yarn through it. Okay. Pull the loop behind the next empty peg and pull behind the next empty peg and pull. And you'll chain cast on all the way around, and then when you get to your last loop, after you chain cast on that, you just place this loop on top of that peg. So you'll chain cast on 24 pegs. Alright, if you want to sew on your limbs, that's the easiest way to do it. That's option 1. Option 2. You have all these nice chains sitting here. You know, you want to add those back to the loom. Alright, and what you want to do is you want to pull from this side. And what you may want to do, if you have a hard time seeing it, is go in and add your stitch markers to each chain so that you can easily see it to pull it up. Alright, so the thing is if you're attaching it with the body, you need to find your center point on your legs. Okay, the center top. So there's your bottom. We need to take and fold our sides up and find our center 2 stitches, which are right here. Now I am going to mark those center 2 stitches, and the reason being is I need those to land on a wedge. Alright, I absolutely need those to land on a wedge, because we're going to increase and decrease our foot area. Alright, so there is one. And the one right next to it. Alright. And you'll need to do the same thing when you add these stitches in. You'll need to find what your 2 middle stitches are. Okay. Looks like it's going to be those 2. Alright. In fact, I'll go ahead and mark those off. I'll pull them together. Alright. And what you want to do is you want to find out where your top 2 middle stitches are on the top. Okay, because what that's going to do is you're going to be creating a foot, and you need it to land on a wedge. Alright, and in all honesty, what I would suggest doing is starting to add the chains from the wedge. Okay, this is typically my starting point. You see the heel peg. What you want to do is you want the right side facing out, the wrong side facing in. Okay, pull your leg area up in there. Now I'm going to show how to attach all 3 methods, but the leg is made exactly the same however way you want to do it. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to place that chain onto that wedge peg, and this one onto this one. Alright, next thing you want to do is take and add the next chain over, and then the next chain, and you want to fill in for 24 pegs. This is the reason why the cast on and the bind off are so important to be looser, so that it is easier to add these chains back. Alright, because you're going to be using them as a stitch. And you're going to sit there and add the chains in all the way around. That one looks like it can be moved forward a little bit more. Okay. And then add it in. And when you get to the second half, you may find that it gets a little bit more challenging, okay? Now, you'll have some connector areas here, okay? And you may need to add those in, okay? We're going to come back around here and add our chains on this side, all right? And we're always adding the one closest to the bottom on the half of the chain, alright? And this is why it was so important to make sure you did a loose bind off and cast on. The cast on was tight and the bind off was loose, okay? And we've about made it around. Alright, and you can see that it is going onto the loom. Okay, now you have these areas that you may have holes in, okay? If you have that, just fill in those spaces by adding them to these areas to fill in the holes, okay? If that happens, which is what I normally do, just add a little extra to those hold areas, okay? At this point, you're going to just knit around, okay? And keep in mind that this one is going to be where you're going to increase and decrease on just this wedge. Okay, so you may have a couple of stitches here and a couple of stitches here. When you go to knit them both together, okay? You're going to end up doing the same thing on this one. But because this is the side I want to show the example of sewing on, I'm going to take it off. But that shows you how to actually attach your chains, and you'll find that that's really easy to do. Okay, so I'm going to take those off now and use those to show how to sew on if you choose to do the limb separate, okay? And so on. And that makes a huge difference too, okay? But this is a method that you can attach these chains and you can just start working. And if you saw the first bear, that's what I did. I attached the chains and worked the limbs. But the chains, the reason why you're chaining everything is because it'll make it easier to see, to sew on, and what you're doing, okay? Alright, that is how you do that with the chain. And honestly, I find that's easier than messing with all these, okay? But if you want a smooth, flawless attachment of a leg, you do this method, alright? So, my starting point, right side facing me. Here's my 2 middle stitches. I'm going to pull this up through the middle. Alright. Now here's where it can get technical and you're going to have to keep up with what stitches are what. Okay. So, we know that these 2 stitches are my wedge stitches. Alright. You're going to pull those on. Make sure that they are not twisted. Alright? You do not want a twisted stitch. Alright? It's like that second one's wanting to twist. Now I suggest you get all your stitches on before you take your stitch markers off. Alright? That way you don't lose the stitches. Okay, so what you need to do is hunt down what your next stitch is. Make sure it's not twisted. Place it on the peg. Make sure it's not twisted. And place on the next peg. I mean, it's a little, it feels cluttery, but it is seamless, and I have a feeling it's generally a little bit tighter too in look. So you just find it, make sure that the stitch is not twisted. As I said, I would suggest putting all your stitches on first before actually taking the stitch markers off. Okay. And you may need to fill in the holes just like you did with the other on those connector areas, alright? And that is not a big deal. But again, make sure that your stitches are not twisted. You lose that flawless look if they're twisted, okay? Alright. And there's that one. And I can show you what the three methods look like when they're done, if you're wondering what the quality of them is. Alright, I find that the second route's easiest, this route's seamless, and the first route's the easiest. But you do have to sew on with the first route. This route and the second route, you don't, which makes it really easy to not have to worry about. And if you hate sewing, well, I hate to tell you, if you hate sewing, then you got to go the harder route. That's just the truth of it. Easier is sewing, harder is not sewing. Alright, we're about reached around to our other side. I've made sure that my stitches are not twisted. Alright. And once I make sure, and it looks like I actually have an extra stitch. How did I manage that one? I'm missing one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. I don't know, but I have an extra stitch. If that happens, you ready for your cheat? It's okay. Don't worry about it. Just add it to an extra peg, and it'll be a decrease. Okay? Alright, so for some reason I ended up with 25 stitches. I don't know how that happened. Kind of weird. But I just added that extra stitch in. Not a big deal. It's not going to show. Alright? Don't fret. Okay, so what you want to do is go in and take all your stitch markers out. Okay? So I'm going to tell you to pause the video if you're doing this method and get your legs set up however way you want. And then we'll come back and start showing you how to do a leg. Okay? So go ahead and pause the video and get your first leg set up so that we can go through how to do that. Okay? Okay, we're ready to start on our leg. Alright. You can kind of pull that through if you want. Okay. So once you've had your setup, whether it's a chain cast on, adding the chains back, or adding your stitches back, what you want to do is a slip knot. Put that on there. And what you're going to do is you're going to knit for 12 rounds. 24 stitches for 12 rounds. And then after those 12 rounds is when we start working the foot. Alright? Well, that doesn't sound like much. I don't think longer legs on a bear looks real good, so. So go ahead and pause the video and knit for your 12 rounds. And we will come back and I will start showing you how to create the foot. And this is where only using one wedge to increase and decrease is helpful. So it's showing you again how versatile this loom is. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, complete your 12 rows, and we'll come back and move on to the next section. Okay, I've done 12 rows, and as you can see, you don't see a seam at all on those 12 rows. Now, if you want a longer leg, you can do, let's say, 16 rows rather than 12. Alright, but I like a shorter row. Okay, now it's time to work our foot. And we're going to be increasing on this wedge only. We're going to do it 4 times. And yes, you can take this concept and make booties. If you're wondering. Okay, so go ahead and you knit 2 over. And then you're going to increase because you're doing a wedge increase. You're going to do 4 wedge increases. So pull that previous stitch back, place the working yarn in front, replace back, move the stitch you just made over to the previous peg, knit your wedge pegs, then pull back your previous stitch, place in front of the peg your working yarn, replace the stitch that you just pulled back, place the stitch you just made on the previous peg, and knit the peg you just increased on. Take your wedge, move it to the next set of pegs, place the stitches you created onto the empty pegs beside the wedge pegs. If necessary, you may want to snug up your stitches. Alright. Okay, now you have just done an increase. Now you're just going to knit your way around. Alright. Then you're just going to knit a row, and you're going to repeat these 2 row set for a total of 4 times. This will count as 1, so you'll end up doing it 3 more times after this. Alright? You cannot increase and increase and increase. You've got to do a row in between of knit after you increase, at bare minimum. Alright, and again, you can do this concept of increasing to make booties for a child if you want. Alright, we're back down to our starting point. Alright, now you just want to knit the rows. You just want to knit around, and then you want to increase again after you knit around. Alright, you're going to do that a total of 4 times, but if you're following along with me, you'll do it 3 more times. Alright, you want a total of 4 increases. As you can see, I'm just knitting those pegs over. Alright, so pause the video, knit this row, increase, and knit around, and then knit around, and then increase, knit around, then knit around. So you increase the 1 wedge, then you knit around, and then you knit a row. Okay, and you're going to do that 3 more times with a total of 4 times. Okay, so pause the video, get your increases done, and then we'll move on to the tip of the foot. Okay? Okay. Now that you've done your increase, and if you've been following the instructions on the increase, you've already done a row of knit after your last increase row. Now you need to do 3 more rows of knit. Now when you see the pattern, you're going to see an increase row, and then you're going to see 4 rows. Well, it's because you've already been doing the pattern. You're going to see that looks like a discrepancy. It's not, because you've been increasing and then doing a knit row in between your increases. You've already done 1 row, so you're going to do 3 more rows of knit. Okay, so pause the video and complete 3 more rows of knit, and then we'll be ready to decrease down the other half of the foot. And you'll be doing a similar method. You'll decrease, then knit a row, decrease, then knit a row. Okay, and then you'll do your drawstring bind off. Okay, if you understand that, then you can just kind of skip to that section and finish that up. Okay, but in the meantime, do 4 rows, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to do the decrease section. We are to the point where we're ready to be decreasing, and we've already done our 4 rows, and you may see that I've changed up things a little bit, but what we're going to do is we're going to start decreasing. Okay, so go ahead and move your wedge down to the next slot. Move your stitches down to the wedge pegs and knit the row. Naturally, when you get to the decrease wedge, you will toss both loops over. Okay, now that we've done a decrease round, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to knit around, alright? And basically what you're going to do is you're going to do a decrease round, then you're going to knit around. A decrease round, and you're going to knit around until you're back down to your 24 stitches, okay? And because we've already done 1 decrease, you're going to have 3 more decreases to do. Okay, but at this point, you want to just knit your way around. And then you're going to repeat the decrease a row, knit a row, until you're down to 24 pegs, and then we will do a drawstring bind off, and I will show you how to do that, and then I will show you what you have left, where you can sew on the leg, and then the 3 options you can, well, actually there's only 2 for the arms. Okay, you have 3 options for your legs, 2 options for your arms. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and complete your decreases of the foot, and then I will show you how to drawstring bind off. Okay, we're going to do our drawstring bind off. Naturally skip that first peg, toss that loop over, pull your tail through, skip, toss over, pull 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 tail through, skip, toss over. Alright, you're back around to your beginning. You're going to skip your starting peg and move over to the next one. And go ahead and take all the rest of your stitches off. Okay, you're at your last one. And you want to drawstring it together. You find your last one, you go up above, there's your strand, go ahead and pull it. Then you want to go ahead and pull your last. You want to thread it through, and tie off. Okay, and now I know we originally started with the body, and I will show you what that looked like. Okay, so as you can see, that's what it looks like when it's attached to the body and worked up in the body. And there's your finishing thing there. And so go ahead and pause the video and close up your foot, and I will show you how to sew on your other leg if you chose to do the sew on method. And then we will move on to the arm, and I'll show you your two options with the arm. And even if you prefer to do the easier method, you may still want to try the arm out because you aren't going to likely lose any stitches. Okay, so pause the video, close up your foot, and I'll show you how to go in and sew on the leg if you've chosen that method. Okay, now it's time to show you how to sew on your leg if you've chosen this method. Naturally, you want to find where your two front stitches are, and these would be it. As you can see, they move right down the front. Okay, so you want to stick your needle through both sections of the chain. Then you want to stick your needle through both sections of the first chain you got a stitch marker through. Alright, then you can take the stitch marker off. And then you want to pull through. You should already have a slip knot on your other side. And pull through. Okay, next you want to find your next front chain, which should be right here. And then you're going to stick it through the entire chain and stick the needle through the entire chain. And then once you set up your first two, then you should be able to just go in and sew up around the leg. Now, this leaves you with a lot of straggling ends that you wouldn't have if you were to do it the other way. Okay. Now, you have the next chain, and you're just going to do this all the way around. Next chain, and then stick it through the next chain. And you stick it through the whole chain, okay, and that'll keep it tighter. Okay. And there's your next chain, and your next chain. And you just go all the way around, and then try to tuck in your tails. Alright, so there's your next chain, and your next chain. And you just keep going all the way around. Find your next chain, pull through. Now it does give you a definite indentation. It's not quite as clean, that kind of thing. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video and sew on your leg all the way around. And then we will move on to our limbs and go from there. Okay. Alright, so pause the video, get your legs sewn on, and then we'll go from there. Okay. I've sewn my way around, and I've sent the needle through, and I'm just going to go in and finish up. And so you'll need a crochet hook to go in and shove all those little straggling ends through to the middle of the animal before stuffing. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this through, okay, to a point where I can just half knot it and then cut the end. Okay, and then we're ready to move on to our arms. You have the option to do a chain cast on just like you did with this leg, and do 20. You want 20 pegs, alright? And so I will show you how to do that. Okay, to do the other arm, you'll need to take and have a single wedge that you're ready to turn around. Okay, and you'll need 20 pegs. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. Alright, and you want to be able to work out 20, and you want your wedges, those grooves, to face the other direction, okay? So you have the option to chain cast on your arm, or you can add the chain in, okay? And again, you always want to go on the outside chain when adding it on. And so what I want to do is pull this up through here. And it doesn't matter where you want to start adding your it doesn't matter where you want to start adding your chains, just so long as you add them, because all this is a simple tube. This isn't as exact science as the legs. Okay, so what you want to do is try to pull that up as much as possible. I know this is a tight area, and because this is my starting point over here, I usually like to find one edge and attach the chain there and work my way around, okay? And always want to attach the part of the chain that's closest to the outside of the loom, okay? But you can do a chain cast on, or you can do this method. And personally, I would suggest trying this method. You're not going to lose a stitch or anything. It's not going to hurt to go ahead and try attaching the chains. But there is a reason why I suggested you do as loose of a chain as possible, okay? So that it makes it easier to go in and add the chains in to do the arm. And this saves you sewing, and if you don't like to sew, you'll want to learn these methods, okay? Now, you'll have a connector area that's not a chain, and you can just add that to 2 stitches to it, which is not a big deal. It doesn't show up when it's all said and done. Alright, so we're still adding chains, and just working our way around for a total of 20. And then you can do your usual rounds. Alright. But if you didn't do it as loose, you may find that your chain feels tighter than you would like. Alright? But that is how you attach your stitches. So it's not as bad as it seems. Okay? So go ahead and set up to do 25 rounds of knit for your arm, okay? And you want to do a slip knot, put that on there, and then you just start knitting, okay? And this is, as I said, a fairly easy way to do this. So you just start knitting all the way around, round and round, for 25 rows, and that should complete your arm. And then I'll show you how to do the drawstring bind off and show you how to sew on the arm, and then we'll stuff the body. Okay, we're to the drawstring bind off, and naturally you're going to skip your first one, and you're going to toss over, pull through, do like you normally do. You're just doing it off of a prong rather than through the middle of the loom. So you're skipping and pulling through all the way around. Okay, and you're back to your beginning. Again, you skip your very first starting peg and drawstring off the rest. Okay, there's your last one. Pull through. Okay. You go to your last, you find the strand above it, right there. Pull that first, then pull the next one, send the strand in, and tie it off. Okay, I'm going to show you how to sew up an arm once you've made it. Do you a slip knot? Okay, and then what you want to do, it doesn't really matter because it's just a tube, because I'd rather have the seam on the bottom. I'm going to attach it there, and I'm going to find my chains like I did with my leg and sew up around, but the connector is going to be over here. So while you're starting to sew around, finding your chains, you will and so you find your chain and you find your chain, and you're going to do this all the way around just like you did your leg. Okay, and that way you have an easy following line that you can do all the way around. Okay, and so this makes it easier to sew on your arm. But again, if you want to try the other method, it does make it a little easier and you don't have this extra step to do. So it's the reason why I like the second method always, when it comes to like the leg, because you aren't going to lose anything. You can sit there and work on finding your chains, mark your chains off, that kind of thing, and still get a clean look. And I'll show you what the 3 options look like. But after you get your arms sewn on, then you want to go in and start stuffing the body, and then I'll show you how to sew on the head. I'm trying to get you to a point where you're connecting the other side. Okay. And you may want to flip it inside out to be able to do the other side. Alright. Once you get to where you need to do the other side, chain and find your first chain and sew down the other way. And this, as you can see, starts to close off the body. Alright. As I said, I prefer doing the other method on the arms. That way you don't have this step and you don't have to worry about losing stitches and that kind of thing. Alright, so this is how you sew up your arm. Chain to chain. It makes it a much cleaner, consistent stitch. And we are about done. Okay, last one. Okay, once you get to the end, then you can kind of stretch that out, and then you can tie it off. Alright, and that is how you sew on the arm if you don't do the other method. Okay, so then at this point you want to turn everything right side out, go in and stuff the body as much as possible, and then I'll show you how to sew on the head. Okay? Okay, I have stuffed my body. And you can see there is adding the stitches back, there is sewing on, and the sewing on and the adding the chains is not much different. It's a little smoother when you add the chains back, okay? So this is also sewing on. This is adding the change. You notice it's a little smoother than actually sewing on. But now we're ready to sew our head on. Okay, so I like to start with the side area. Alright, and I'm going to send it through a chain. And lock it in with my slip knot. Alright, because I'm starting with the side, I want to kind of line it up with an ear. And this really is going to be eyeing it. It's not going to be as cut in stone as some of the other stuff that we've done through this whole process. But what you want to make sure is that the center of the head, back of the head lines up with the tail, the ears line up with arms, and the center of the nose lines up. So you send the needle through a couple of chains. Send it through a chain, then send it through the head. And so what you see I'm doing is I'm sending through a chain, and then I'm kind of sending through the next column right by the chain I just did. And you'll find a system the more you make these on how to sew the head on. But it's not as cut and dry as the rest of it is. What you can do is you can line that up with the bottom of the snout. We're almost done. And I'm going to send it through there. Send it through there. And then what you can do is send the needle through the body and out another location, and then tug it a little, cut. You can reshape, and there you go. That is how you make a teddy bear on the X Loom.